Advanced Civilization is a very long game that I like to play. It takes 13 hours. We start at 10 in the morning and we call it at 11 at night. I don't know if we've actually finished a game. Despite the name Advanced Civilization, it is a very simple game. Each unit on the board multiplies, moves one space, and builds cities. Your city count determines how many trade cards you get, and after trading to get monopolies of certain commodities, you spend them to purchase technology cards. Tech cards are your main way of getting points in order to win. To streamline some of the heavier calculations, we use a Google Sheets program based on JP's spreadsheet. See the links in the description. The original program is too old to run without legacy versions of Microsoft Excel, and had some limitations such as an error on one specific calculation, and you could only have one page open at a time. So I took it upon myself to remake it in Google Sheets with some modifications. Still not perfect, but at least we can all have the page we want open on our phones. This video is a time-lapse of the game. I forgot to start recording until 11, so much of the starting area is already taken. This is when the player that was running late showed up. He had Africa, and we'd been running it for him to maximize population growth. Fortunately, he arrived before we had to start building cities, so although he may not have expanded as much into Egypt as possible, he was still good enough. At this point, the Egypt player usually has 2 cities in order to get into the next age on the AST, but in this game, Egypt only made 1 city, and it was closer to Africa than Egypt. At this point, there are several things going on strangely in this game. Iberia is absolutely tiny, allowing Illyria to take all of Italy. Illyria has a city with no guys next to it, pretty much in Crete's territory. Assyria has come across the sea. He said, "Don't worry, guys. They're going to visit Iberia," and plans to move them. No one has taken the prime land in Babylonian floodplain. Usually this is fought over by Assyria, Babylon, and Arabia. Between Indus and Babylon, they have walled off a section of land by building cities around it. I called this the exclusion zone. And Egypt has been avoiding their floodplain as much as possible because last time they played Egypt, a flood nearly wiped them out. At this point, the Assyrians did move, and because they had astronomy, they went across the Mediterranean, disgruntling Egypt and Africa. And the guys on their way to Iberia had to make a pit stop in Illyria, which cost them a city. Because of this, we could see some alliances forming. Africa and Egypt. Illyria was also on good terms with Egypt, which by proxy meant with Africa as well. Crete held loose ties with Illyria, but was feeling quite cramped. Assyria, Babylon, and Indus were all on good terms, and Iberia and Arabia felt far enough away to not need alliances, or I was unaware of them. At this point, we took a break for cake. Usually we play this game on my birthday, but it had been a couple weeks since then, and it was one of my friend's actual birthday that day. I also checked on the time lapse, and there was an error, so I started it again. We lost about 15 minutes of footage. Due to the way calamities came out over the last few turns, nothing really changed on the board too much, because we were just rebuilding what we had lost the turn before. One notable thing tech-wise is that Assyria went for military, meaning they moved last, seeing what everybody did already. Board-wise, Egypt and Assyria were the strongest, and both having good boats had influence on the whole board. Thus, they were called the superpowers. Points-wise, Assyria and Illyria were the strongest. It is at this point that the players in last change their strategy from winning to having the most fun. With all these things in mind, several players worked together to attack Assyria because he could only protect a couple of cities. Crete began liquidating his forces, and from this point forward began making a wall of troops to go against whatever was in his way. Due to Thrace being the girlfriend of the Assyrian player, we were unable to convince her to join the attack. On the last turn, the lone Illyrian city was taken down, after lasting the whole game constantly under threat, as well as the exclusion zone was finally opened. One of the few tech that Crete had was monotheism, so their wall of troops thematically was on a crusade, and according to him, the Illyrians were Muslims. Egypt never got the flood they were so worried about. In fact, we are pretty sure a flood should have come out earlier. Africa had the most calamities, and Egypt almost went the whole game without getting any. After the first few turns, the rest of the turns were surprisingly consistent in timing. The final scores were Illyria in first with 4,200, Assyria at 3,600, then Egypt at 3,300. The middle of the pack was at about the 2,000 point range, and Crete came in last with 1,700. If you noticed anything or were present and want to add anything that I missed, feel free to let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.